Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, dust lasers, peasants, vassals, gun owners, gun haters. I am a useful idiot, and today I'm going to talk about gun control. And I've talked about this topic a little bit in videos I've done on the various shootings that have happened over the last year. A disturbing trend, to be sure, but historically not out of the ordinary. But here we go. We have this latest shooting with all these children killed, and I don't even want to get into all the anomalies involved in all these shootings, whether there's one shooter, two, three shooters, brainwashing. There are a lot of odd things about all of these shootings, but I don't really want to go there. It's too big a topic, and there's just too much conjecture, and there's just too much cognitive dissonance out there. But I want to focus in on the realities of gun control and gun violence. And I certainly understand the liberal viewpoint. I used to have it when I was a young, idealistic hippie in the 70s. But as I got older and I actually learned facts and history, I found great challenges to that viewpoint about we just get rid of the guns and everything will be a Shangri-La. And the reality is that that is not how it works, because that bottom line, that argument that we always hear is true. The argument that if you restrict guns, then the only people that will have guns are the bad guys. So anyway, to the liberal media and the Obama administration and the demonstrators out there, to them the logic seems obvious, that the more guns there are, the more deaths, suicides, and accidents. And that would be conjecture, because the actual figures point out quite the opposite. And the U.S. supposedly has very high murder rates, and that is relatively true, but as it turns out, we're not even anywhere near the top. And so there's a lot of interesting data out there to look at. And the evidence is out there, and there's plenty of it. And it points to the fact that access to guns mainly disarms law-abiding citizens and making criminals' lives easier. Guns let potential victims defend themselves when the police aren't there. And certainly that has an effect on the criminals as well. If they have to consider that in any situation they go into armed, they will be met with arms. So first, let's be clear that lots of nations, including civilized ones, suffer from both higher overall murder and gun murder rates. And we are far from the top. In 2011, the U.S. murder rate was 4.7 per 100,000 people. The gun murder rate was 3.1%. And I'll get into that difference a little later when I run through what the killers are in the U.S. But most of Eastern Europe, most of Southeast Asia, most of the Caribbean, and most of Africa, all but one South American nation, and all of Central America and Mexico suffer even higher murder rates than we do. In fact, despite very strict gun control, Russia and Brazil's homicide rates over the last decade averaged about 4 to 5 times higher than ours. That's Russia and Brazil. So you can't just cherry pick a country like the UK and use them as an example of what happens when you have gun control. That's just a convenient cherry-picking argument. And even worse, to ignore countries they idolize, even lower murder rates before they ban guns. So a country like the UK used to have an even lower murder rate before they banned guns. And also, look at the United States. The two cities that have the most murders, and the most murders with handguns, Chicago and Washington, D.C., and those are the two cities that have the strictest gun laws in the nation. Chicago had 500 murders last year. It's 1.5 murders per day, every day of the year. And they have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. Now we have New York wanting to join that roster, and Chicago wants to tighten their gun laws even more, in spite of the evidence that their crime has gotten worse. So what happens? What happened when Americans have been allowed access to guns? Consider a simple fact. Concealed handgun permits and gun sales have been soaring over the last 4 years, as people worry about Obama yet murders and violent crime have been falling. So don't fall for the media hype and the media agenda and the politicizing of these tragedies, just being used for these political opportunities. And this isn't just a recent phenomenon. If you look at the U.S. over the last few decades, even after accounting for all other factors, the states that have the biggest increases in concealed handgun permits and gun ownership have seen the biggest drop in murder and violent crime rates. Gun control just does not make sense. It just doesn't work. In fact, it makes things worse. And another good indicator of why gun control is being blown way out of proportion right now, and I have my hat tip to Bertley for providing me this list. The 10 biggest killers in the U.S. Now pay attention. The 10 biggest killers in the United States. Firearms are number 10. So let me go through this list. 529,000 people a year killed from tobacco products. 195,000 people a year killed from medical areas. Let's ban doctors. 107,000 people killed from alcohol abuse. 34,000 people killed in motor vehicle accidents. How about phone control? How about if we have more strict phone control? 31,000 people from unintentional poisoning. 25,000 people from drug abuse. 24,000 people from unintentional falls. 16,000 from non-firearm homicides, and 11,500 people from firearm homicides. So non-firearm homicides outnumber firearm homicides. That says a lot right there. And get this, according to the FBI, the #1 weapon used in violent crimes is a baseball bat. So are we having any restrictions on baseball bats? And this is a very telling list. And it shows us that relatively we have 300 million firearms. Probably by the end of the next 2 weeks, we're going to have 400 million firearms owned by private citizens in the United States. And the fact that there's 11,000 firearm homicides, it's pretty well blown out of proportion. And the fact is, there's plenty of ways that you can kill people if you have a mind to. Hey, here's an idea. All you crazy serial killers out there, you don't need a gun. You just need a couple of crowbars. You cram them through the doors at both ends of the cafeteria, and then you light the building on fire. I'm not suggesting you do that. Let me clarify that. I'm not suggesting that anybody does that. Let me clarify that again. I am not suggesting that anybody does that. But the fact is, if somebody wants to hurt somebody else, they can do it. It doesn't matter whether they have an ice pick, a set of keys, a piece of broken glass, a baseball bat, or a gun. So now, let me get on to the frenzy we have going on now. So first we have the predictable corporate shills and bootlickers and scum on the media whipping everybody into a frenzy and driving home some agenda. And then we have the usual pattern, the knee-jerk reaction, where now all of a sudden every politician out there is jockeying for his next promotion in the political arena by pontificating some direction about gun control. So everybody's getting in on it. So like I say, now we have New York instigating these harsh gun control laws. We have Chicago going to up the ante there. And the same thing happens. Some terrible tragedy happens, and everybody jumps in to exploit it. And then the worst part about it is everybody points the finger at the wrong target. And they talk about guns, and it has everything to do with everything else but guns. And then the crowd goes wild, and they have their pitchforks and their torches, and they demand that the politicians do something. So, hey, now the politicians are all out there doing something. And that's how it goes. And now everybody's going apeshit about Obama's gun laws. And I looked at that whole list, and it's meaningless. It is meaningless. It will change nothing. And it's just political rhetoric par excellence. The fact that there's 25 executive orders is ridiculous. But more importantly, most of them are just lip service and programs or oversight this, teaching that, looking at regulations, blah, 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 blah. But you know what it really does? Look at it closely. Look at that list, and what it really does is it strengthens the police and surveillance state by centralizing more information. That's what's really going on in this gun control. So he's acting like he's doing something, Obama, and he's not really doing anything, certainly nothing about gun control. It's all a lot of big talk, but at the heart of that list is more consolidation of power and information sharing and data on American citizens. And that's what this is really all about as far as the Obama administration is concerned. And then the bottom line, my bottom line that I always have. Well, wait, I have two bottom lines. One bottom line is that I usually don't like to get into a partisan discussion between the liberals and the conservatives, because frankly they're both about the same and they deserve each other. But I will say in this instance that liberals, these anti-gun people, haven't done any homework. They just have this gut feeling, and they trust their gut, and they go on anecdotal evidence, and they trust the media. And in fact, liberals seem to trust the government more, maybe because they think the government should be doing everything for them. But in this instance, I will say that conservatives, at least, and the pro-gun crowd have done their homework. They understand guns, they understand the gun culture, they understand the nature of violence in our society, and they have the right idea about looking at the facts about guns. And the other bottom line there is that conservatives do not trust their government. They understand the value of a well-armed citizenry, because the liberals tend to be naive, to think that tyranny is not going to reappear in our modern world is naive at best. So now let me get to my real bottom line, and that's the fact that we are going to see violence like this, and it's not because of the guns, it's because of the examples. And the fact that we have violence is used to solve our problems, and we see this in the media, we see this in foreign policy, we see this in our society, we see this in law enforcement, we see it in the attitudes of our government, we see this in the product churned out by Hollywood and their hypocrisy, and we have violence and murder all around us. These exact scenarios we see in these shootings are played out over and over and over again, and all this media that's marketed to kids at this age who have a morbid curiosity and tend to be cynical in a world they're born into that looks the way ours does. And then the other part of that is the hypocrisy of our elites talking about gun control. When we have the Obama administration in the Fast and Furious episode with guns being given to known killers and drug cartels down in Mexico, and us supplying weapons to Al-Qaeda and terrorists all throughout the Middle East and North Africa in order to execute our foreign policy out of convenience. The fact that the elites all have their own private armies and bodyguards, our own State Department and military and government doesn't even trust our own military. They hire mercenaries to do their personal protection, and we live in a culture of drones and torture. So it's not guns. It is not guns. Gun control just does not work. Indeed, it makes things worse. So there's my piece on gun control. I hope this blows over soon, because it's really getting tedious. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.